And we are good to go.
Oh, I'm not on the mic. All right. Hang on. Is that better? Oh, I have to be super close to it. Super close to it. Okay. So can you hear me now? Can you guys hear me now? Oh my gosh, I have to be super close to it. That doesn't make sense. All right, good morning, everyone. We are here and ready for day 2 of the summit. Are you guys ready? Are you friends ready? How about everyone online? Are you all ready? So if for our online friends, would you please pop your name and your institution and anything else you want us to know about you in the chat? And I want to say good morning and welcome to everyone. I'm going to share my screen just so that we have something to look at here. Oh, I see people popping their names in the chat. So let's try to get this and share this and then go here. Does that work? All right. And then here's our chat. So how do I move the chat? I'm going to have to minimize that because I can't figure out how to move it. All right, so welcome everyone. It's day 2 of the summit. We're here in Syracuse and we're here virtually and we're here physically. And the last time we were here all together in person, we were in New York City and COVID was there at the same time and we didn't know it at that time. And it has been since then that we have been together physically. And so this is a special time and a special event that we get to see each other again physically. Literally, I've been in my kitchen for the last 3 years. This is probably one of less than 5 times that I've been out of my house, really, at an event, at a work event. This is the 4th annual online summit. Of course, we've been doing this summit. I have been doing the summit for the last 24 years. And Dan Feinberg mentioned to me that my math was off. And technically, the first one I think was 96, something like that, 96, I think. So if you do the math, I'm off by a year, and that's because at some point in the 90s, we didn't do one. So that's why we're in the 24th year of the summit. How many people online and here in the room, this is your first time at the SUNY Online Summit? I want you to look around because these are your new friends. You guys are in the new kid on the block cohort. How many people have been to at least 10 of them? Okay, so these are your OGs. Right. So I want the newbies to know and see the folks who have been around for a while. Where are the SUNY Online staff in the room and also virtually? Raise your hands. All right, look around, and if you haven't met some of the SUNY Online staff, please go ahead and try to get to know the folks that are here. How many new SUNY Online staff? I see Maureen back there. Maureen. Hi, new SUNY Online staff, like in the last couple of years since COVID. So I see Maureen. I see Josh, who's also new to the community. Josh, you raise your hand. He's looking around. How many ambassadors, SUNY Online ambassadors, either current or past, are in the room? Raise your hands high. So we want to applaud you. Congratulations for being one of our ambassadors. Any award winners from yesterday that are in the room? Yay! Congratulations. How about faculty who are in the room? And this virtually too, please raise your hands. We just want to see who everyone is, okay? And then how many IDs? instructional designers, and you might raise your hand more than once because maybe you wear many hats. How many leaders or admins or? Okay, all right. So we wear a lot of different hats. I want to know who has traveled the furthest, who's in this room physically, who to get here, who has traveled the furthest? You're Wisconsin. You're Alberta, Canada. So I think he wins. How about online? I don't see the chat. So Megan, can you?
Yeah, it looks like somebody this morning was saying they were from Ireland, from the University of Limerick. So it looks like we have somebody joining us from Ireland.
Ireland's in the house. And later today, we're going to have two beautiful new friends who have beautiful accents who are going to talk to us about recognition for prior learning and their amazing project that they do at the Atlantic Technical University, I believe is where they're from. So awesome. So Ireland is also here with us online. So what else do I want to tell you? I'm Alexandra Pickett. I'm the director of online teaching. Are you Haley? Haley, I forgot to say, who's a student? Yay! Oh, and yeah, we have 2 students with us. So I can't wait until you see this, the student panel that we have cooked up for you. Michelle Fort, are you here? I don't see her here yet either. But Michelle and Kiara Williams are going to moderate our wonderful SUNY online student panel. So that's going to be a highlight of the day today as well. Any other students in the room who are also happen to be students in their 18th year of their PhD program? Hello, yes, that's actually true of me, 18 years, almost done. Seriously, my kid was 4 when I started. She's 21, about to graduate college. All right, so I want to welcome you again to Syracuse, whether you're virtual or whether you're here physically. We had about 80 plus registrations to come physically, just so that you know, and we have over 600 people who have registered for the virtual event. So, and from all over the world, from inside of SUNY, outside of SUNY, and all over the world. So we are very excited to be able to do this event both physically and virtually, and try and take some of the lessons that we learned from doing this as a virtual conference over the last 2 years. We've been streaming this live since 2008 for free, just putting it out there. And this year we're trying to do it in a more engaging way from all those lessons that we learned of doing the event virtually. So, okay, how do I make this advance? There we go. We already talked about that. So I want to do a couple of thanks to the folks who are responsible for, making this work. It takes a village, right? So we have a lot of campus input, and you see the names there from all across the SUNY system. We couldn't do this without the support and the input of Doodle and the SUNY Provost's office. We have a wonderful social media team that helps to promote this event. And so if you're interested in contributing anything at all to that, you can go to the social page, the social media page on the website, and see all of the different platforms. And the hashtag is just SUNY Summit, SUNY, what is it? SUNY Online Summit with a hashtag. And remember to use caps. That's important for accessibility. I want to thank Nancy Motondo, who's out there and who worked with everybody to get this show on the road. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. That was for you, Nancy. And all of the folks at the CPD. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to all of the moderators and the facilitators. There are 3 there's a technical moderator, there is an introduction person, and there is a virtual moderator, all to help make this work. And these are all volunteers coming from our community. And we are so grateful to have your assistance, your help, your participation, your engagement, helping us to make this an event that is both for the physical folks engaging and good, as well as for our virtual friends. some links. So this is going to be posted online in case you want to go to any of those links. I'll just stop there a second. And then I just want to say that for the folks who are participating, you will get badges depending on, different roles and different things. You will have some commemorative badges to take away with you if you like badges. I love badges, so I'm going to give you some. Aaron and I are going to give you some, and Willow. So recognizing those award winners again and our ambassadors again, we're going to do the ambassador recognition. This is like going by itself. Our unsession, go back. The unsession is later this afternoon. And if you go to that bit.ly and it's on the website, you can sign up. And if you don't sign up, I will call on you either virtually or physically to come tell us in 3 minutes something cool that you are doing at your institution or in your teaching or in your job. Something cool. Everyone in this room is doing something cool, and we all want to know about it. So I will call on you, but you can sign up and we'll go in the order of the sign up sheet that's there at that bit.ly. And you only have 3 minutes and I will cut you off. And yeah, I think that's it for the slides here. So I have the how do I get rid of this thing? I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our first presenter. And Norm, you are here. All right. So Norm, slideshow. You will recognize this guy as that guy. You're wearing the same shirt. I figured I had. Oh no! So I have it on good authority this morning. I have it on good authority this morning that Norm put pants on for us today. I am so pleased that you were able to get here through all the snow and whatnot that you had to travel through in order to get here from Alberta. Norm is a professor in the Department of Education at Mount Royal University in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which I think is really far west and north. You have authored and co-authored books. And you have a forthcoming one on the community of inquiry and your 7 principles of blended learning, as well as several others. I have the links to his publications and books on our website if you're interested in exploring. He's also given us a bunch of resources. So if you look on the website, he's got like homework for us and a reading list, as a good professor would. So you are also a co-founding member of the Community of Inquiry Research Group. So this is an OG right here, along with Terry Anderson. Tell me the names. Anderson, Garrison, and Rourke. No. And he's an associate editor of a bunch of different journals. And we are just so thrilled and pleased to have you here to join us to share with us anything that you want to talk about, which I think is going to be the 7 principles of blended learning. So thank you very much. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you for that. Well, thank you so much for being here. Again, a bit like the airline, I know you had a choice, and I really appreciate that you chose to fly with us today. It was really exciting being here yesterday because, like Alex mentioned, I'm sort of used to being just part of one world, either face-to-face or online. And it was wonderful yesterday, just the modeling. I don't know if Daniel's here from yesterday afternoon. Gosh, what just a great example of being able to bring the 2 worlds together. So I'm going to try and do this today. So just a few logistics before we begin. It looks like there's a few people with laptops here. I know we're busy, we've got email and everything, but could I just ask you to be with me for this next hour? So I'm going to put the links online as well. Just hang on. So it's tinyurl.com SUNY Summit. So in the SUNY's capitalized, if you can go there. Just this, I'm a bit of a fanboy of the State University of New York, the online system. You folks have really not just been the pioneers, but you've created frameworks that are being used all over the world, and especially extensively where I come from, the western part of Canada. So I know there's a tremendous amount of expertise here online and face-to-face, and I'd really like to share this. One of the things I did is my background. I taught junior high for a number of years, and I know we've got a great session this afternoon about active high flex, but I find it's really important that we're engaging and we're doing something as we do this, and there's a tremendous amount of notes. So I'm going to see this floating menu. And again, we've got Rob, we've got co-pilots. Rob, there you are. Whew. Rob's going to be the co-pilot here. And I'm sorry, who's the moderator in the online environment?
It's me, and I was just about to jump in and say, I don't believe we're seeing the same thing that's on the screen behind you. I think we're still viewing Alex's presentation.
Okay. Stop share.
Stop share.
And share. Perfect. And then share.
And then.
And go for, where is it? That guy right there. Perfect.
Huh. Okay.
It's Megan, right?
Megan, yeah.
Megan, thank you. Because Megan, I'm going to lean on you because the majority of people are online. I was just saying, and I'm just going to put this in the chat. I think this is the correct link, Megan, just so that you folks have access to this as well. We got the chat, and this is the handout. And we're going to really lean into the online folks because I know you're all on a device. So not that we're picking on people. I was saying it's really interesting as the semester goes on. I'm used to really doing more conventional blended learning where the students meet physically once a week and then they're online for the rest of the week. I know that COVID, the numbers are going down, but it's fascinating with the young people I work with, and it's actually a little scary. They've strep throat, bronchitis, pneumonia. They're sick, and they're sick for more than one day. So it's fascinating as the semester goes on and on. We're doing more of this high flex where we've got people online and face-to-face. So great. You've got the handout. Just Megan, when I go here, can you see some slides now, Megan?
Yep, I can see them. They're just not in presentation view right now. So I can see all the ones on the side there too.
Whoops, hang on here. We'll get presentation view. Look at that. All these pop up, these cool windows. Megan, how's that look now?
I'm still seeing the ones on the side there. It's not in presentation view for me.
Okay. Okay, is pause. So to unpause that, I just new share or up.
There you go. Now it looks good
So-
from our end.
Okay, so
Yep.
this is no, but this is important. Again, I heard it, it takes a community to raise a child. It's amazing. When I do this with young people, we have flight attendants at each of the tables because they're the ones that know more about this than I do. So this is great. We've got 95 people. We've got here, I've learned that Google times out at about 100 people. So some people may need to go to the second section if you get kicked out. tinyurl.com SUNY 2. So I'm hoping that a few people in the room are able to get onto the document because what I like to do is we're all going to share our resources. We've all got lots of ideas. And then I promise I'll come in later today and sort of go through and try and organize and summarize our thoughts. So there's 3 things I like to do. And we've got a great session coming up. And I promise, so one thing I'm pretty good at is time. The first thing I noticed yesterday, it was wonderful. Your provost was talking about the priorities in SUNY, and I was making a bit of a sarcastic job. We're definitely not in Florida. I am so excited about your priorities, especially around equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I come from just north of the border, and I know some of you have probably been across Lake Ontario, the St. Lawrence, and I know we've got some other Canadians in the room here too. I think the stat is about 80% of our population lives within 300 miles of your border. So we've got a lot of open space and a lot of Indigenous Native people. So this is a real focus for us, is the equity, the diversity, inclusion. And I find in your first priority was student success. And it's really, really key. My experience, if students aren't engaged, they're not going to be successful. So I'd like to talk a little bit about engagement. And then I'd like to talk about what I'm doing right now. What are our roles? It's just the world is so complex, and I'm going to pull this mail thing. Multitasking is difficult for me, and I just really need to focus on what are our roles in this complex environment. And then finally, I'd like to just share a little bit about our community inquiry framework. I'll be honest, some of the people that are doing the real cutting edge around the community inquiry, Meg, you, Peter Shea, are actually in the state university. So I'm a little nervous because I have a feeling there's people here that actually know more about this framework than I do. So that's the plan. Megan, hopefully we've got a few people that have been able to get onto the document. I'll check in a minute. Megan, do you think we should start?
Yep, I think we're pretty good. I've seen a lot of folks, in the chat, so it looks like we're good to go.
Okay, perfect. So I'm hoping we've got a few people on this. We'll get to in a minute. We'll all pick our row. We'll put our name, or you can make yourself up, and we're going to complete that particular row. So to begin with, and this is, Megan, where I can really pick on people because you've got a chat. We're going to do a little think, pair, share. So my institution is well, it's not as old as Syracuse. Boy, I didn't realize how old this university here is, Syracuse, but we are about 120 years. And this is a term that I think we use too much, student engagement. And I remember what engagement meant 45 years ago. I went to a university on the other side of the river, Kingston at Queens, and that was our big weekend event, was getting in the car, driving down the I-90. And I don't think they call it the Carrier Dome anymore. I hear it's been renamed, but that was our engagement. It was really about the learning that took place outside. So just in the chat room and just at your table, I always start, this is the way I start all my courses, my grad courses and undergrads, is a conversation, getting them to share their stories. What does it mean to be engaged in your learning? And this could be formal, informal. So if you wouldn't mind at the tables, and Megan, if you can gently nudge people in the chat, what does it mean to be engaged? So we've got some students here that I'm really excited, because I hate to say it, I'm going to pick on you because you're the people we want to know. And what engagement meant 45 years ago is a little different. So just take a moment, please introduce yourself if you're sitting at a table, and just engagement. What does engagement mean to you? So we'll do that. And Megan, I'm starting to see a bit of a chat, but if you're online, our friends online, if you could just in the chat, what does it mean to have students engaged in your class? Or if we have students online, what does it mean to be engaged in your studies? So let's go for it. First thing in the morning, introduce yourself to each other. All right, here we go. Don't let me down. Megan says, don't let me down. We want to see online chat. Go online, people. We've got over 100. Okay, connections, interacting. Yeah. Active. Yes. Yay. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, now the difficult moment again. Hands on top. That means stop. This is again, for me, this is engagement, that people are having conversations, they're talking. Megan, we're going to lean into you for a minute. Megan, I know it's overwhelming, but there are some great comments in the chat. Megan, I'm sorry to lean so heavily into you, but Megan, any that you want to pull out? I'm going to pull out a couple in a minute, but Megan, any that you see that where you go, wow, that's kind of interesting. I really didn't think about that around engagement. Megan, over to you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good ideas in here. A lot of the same, I'm seeing a lot of active listening, active participation, interaction, engagement. One that I think was specifically really interesting was somebody said, and I got to find it here because it got up in the chat. I know I'm engaged. This is Judy Littlejohn says, I know I'm engaged when I get excited about the topic and can't wait to tell someone else about it. So that aspect of personal relevance, I thought that one was pretty cool too.
That's Megan, you and I were on, it's the relevance. I really was enjoying that. There's another one there that I really like, the idea of peer feedback and sort of student-led learning. Now, this is where it gets tough. You can always volunteer someone else. We've got co-pilot Rob. He has a microphone. Does anybody in this room feel like they would like to share? I always find the online group, it's not a problem because they can chat, but you can volunteer someone else. Anybody? I found like, Ferris Bueller Days Off. Anybody like to share something at a table or point at someone else, get someone else to say something? We've got someone. Yay, Lisa. Oh, thank Marjorie. Thank you. Just online people know. Anne.
That was underhanded.
Anne, sorry, Anne, over to you. I thought it was going to be Marjorie. Can I quickly say, Marjorie was on the news last night. Do you know that?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. Marjorie, okay. Sorry, Anne, over to you.
I was saying that when my students leave my class with a sense of empowerment, that their thoughts and feelings, I guess, are valuable and that they're allowed to share them and that they can share them in a way that other people listen.
And okay, Lisa, now we broke the ice. Lisa's ready too, but I think that's so important, that idea of motion and passion. Lisa, over to you.
We were talking about, I was just baseline happy whenever students got courageous enough to speak.
Yes.
And I learned here that my colleague teaches public speaking and it's a required class, and how it really comes down to personal empowerment. And I said, as much as they may dislike it at the time, how many students have come back and thanked you years later for teaching them how to speak publicly and to gain that confidence?
Yeah, there are quite a few, actually. It's been really nice. I had one just the other day email me saying, oh my God, I was thinking about you. I use impromptu speaking every day at my job and I just love it. And it's so useful. Thank you.
But one
and
of
then
those.
I claimed credit for a student who became a politician. I said, yeah, that was me, but not what to say, just how to say it.
Yeah. but I just want to build on that, though. It is really short-term pain for long-term gain, because I think a lot of us, when we nudge or push they're not children, the students out of their comfort zone, the resistance, but later on they go, that was the best thing ever. It was like, like getting the little bird to fly, you nudged me off the bridge. So we could go on with this, but I will finish at 10:15. You probably know that there's been a number of people, it's like, it's the same as you. There we go, back up. Some of you may be familiar with this fella, Dennis Litke. He's a couple states over in Maine. He was on Obama's National Educational Administration team for both of Obama's terms. Big Picture Learning Med. He's started now College on Bound. I love hearing this guy speak because he keeps it simple. He talks to me about the 3 R's. And we saw this, Megan, in the thing, the relevance, the curiosity and the connectedness, the relevance that students can see themselves in the learning. The second thing, and I saw this with the peer-led, and I think this is becoming more and more important in our world, is this idea of relationships, that we don't learn on our own, sort of the community, the connections there. And last but not least, I was talking to Jeremy, there you are, about gamification and stuff. Is this sense of rigor, the challenge? Jeremy, if the game isn't challenging, it's boring. But I think people really rise to the challenge and they like that. So those are Dennis's 3 R's. The other one, let's see if I can get this to work. I actually know this fella and I can actually pronounce his name now. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. So he's the one who did a lot of writing in the mid 70s. And, this is where in sports, he coined the term being in the zone. And Anne, back to you. It's so exciting when they're still excited afterwards. Now I know You had 2 Olympics, Winter Olympics in the States. I think it was 1980. I actually came down. Do you remember the Miracle on Ice? The American hockey team won. And I think it was 1932. So we had the Olympics, though, in my city in 1988, and we still are the Winter Sports Center. That's where our women's hockey team, I think your team is a little better than our women. But anyway, I have a few students on the women's team, but he comes up every 4 years to work with our Olympic athletes. And, you know, sports psychology, being in the zone, and back to you, it really is amazing, that emotion and being in the zone. Just a few others then. Again, I'm in education, so we like to use fancy words, but it's so exciting when I go out to junior high schools or high schools and students can really explain to me how they learn, their frameworks. They go, "You're not my teacher. You're just a learning partner." There was a Russian fellow, you probably heard of him, maybe Lev Vygotsky, the zone of proximal development, the scaffolding that we're learning partners. So I work with an amazing fella. He's telling me he's retiring. I don't think he will. Randy Garrison. And he did a lot of work with one of his grad students around this idea of shared metacognition. And again, that was one of the comments that came out, the peer feedback, that we don't learn in isolation. It's a village. So this is a graphic from a wonderful woman I work with, Deb Dell, who's the executive director for youth counseling and addiction for our Native or Indigenous people in Canada. And she's pushed me a little farther. I think this is Iroquois Confederacy here. You've got the Mohawks a little further. Over in the state of Maine and in Nova Scotia, it was the Mi'kmaq people. These are the people that encountered the first Europeans, which were the Vikings. And then I still can't believe we still have cod. We still have fish off of Newfoundland. But, you know, we've had the Basque, the Portuguese, and the Spain forever. And it's Albert Marshall goes, you know, what we really need to do, and I think this is important for all of us, is, you know, critical constructive thinking, being able to look at the 2 perspectives. And he's done a lot of work about 2-eyed seeing, looking at sort of the native North American perspective and looking at the others. I had the privilege, I worked for Exxon for a number of years as a petroleum geologist, did a lot of work up in Prudhoe Bay in Alaska. And I spent 3 years of my life actually living on Baffin Island. And I love it, this idea of IQ. And I think we're seeing it again, how important is we're a species that doesn't live in isolation. And I know I was talking to someone yesterday from SUNY, the environmental science and forestry. You have Robin Wall-Kimmer, who is like a rock star up in our area. Braided, there we are, thank you, braided sweetgrass. But it's really neat, again, how important it is we learn to live in partnership with our natural environment. And you have just the Verdant. We are talking about the Verdant, upstate New York, one of the most beautiful places ever. If you go out to the far West Coast, some of you have been out to Portland, Seattle. This is the West Coast. It's the Haida Nation. And it's really exciting for me. And again, we talked, Anne, I'm sorry to pick on you, but I love it. That emotion, they really talk about the emotion or the energy that's created when we start to work in a group, and really fascinating what's happening in the state of Washington and the province of BC. So let's land. We've got students here again. I hope you're in the zone. I hope you're excited. Maybe some of your faculty members are here. Now we're thinking about ourselves, and this is a tricky one for me. I don't know how to do this. So we're going to do a table talk, and Megan, back to you. What are the different roles? It's gotten complex. Like it's like an onion. There's so many skins. So just back to the table, and Megan, if we can gently prod those people online, just what are some of your roles? Concierge, orchestra, symphony director. So back to the tables, and you folks online, if you can start using the chat again, what are the different roles? Because I think it's really important that we get a handle on this, because we're only one person. And I know a lot of you were probably up late last night working with your students, but there really is only 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'm not getting any younger, and I feel like I'm 19, but my body says I'm 63. Congratulations, I'm turning 64, Lisa. So, okay, that was a few days ago. We can't sing happy birthday now. So back to the tables, just curious, the roles. So just at your table, sharing roles. Rob's I'm sure we'll get somebody from the audience in a minute, and others there. Move it. Yes, so they can see the question. Look at that. I fixed it. Thank you. Okay, roll, talk. It's your turn to chat. Chat again. Roles. What are our roles? Okay, yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Motivator, yeah. But- Therapist, okay. Megan, we're definitely going to pull up that therapist one. Okay. Activator, curator, and coach. Activator. Thanks, Rob. Well, we'll get this. I thought that's the time. We'll bring it in. We'll bring it in. Sounding board. Okay. Mhm. Mm. Okay. Yes. And data. Oh, there's some interesting ones coming up. All right. Okay. Okay, this is where it gets more difficult. The online group is going, okay, what's happening? What's happening? Just for the online folks, hopefully you're just incredible stuff coming up. But I know this is where it's going to get more and more difficult for me to get the attention of the group. The second cup of coffee is kicking in. I'm hearing laughter. They're enjoying talking to each other more than listening to me. So just 1 second here. On back, clap back. There we go. There we go. Okay, I know this is where it gets difficult because again, the conversations are always a lot more interesting than what I have to say. But again, Megan, there were some really interesting roles. Would you mind picking up a few, and I'll grab a few as well. Megan, over to you.
Yeah, sure. There are some really good ones in here. I think I saw Nancy Rosen earlier. She wrote sometimes an entertainer. I thought that one was fun. And then students are motivated to learn. Oh wait, I'm too far up in the chat. Hold on, I gotta go down. Facilitator, empower, facilitator, a lot of those, advisor, mentor. A lot of folks liked curator. That seemed to be a popular one in the chat. We had doula of being empowered. That one was a fun one. And then one last one that I saw, a sounding board, and when necessary, redirector and guide.
And Megan, there's one other one I saw that I'm not good at, but I saw a therapist.
Yep, I saw. Yeah, that was a good one too.
I saw that there. You know, the other one that came out, kudos to you, because we talked a little bit about this yesterday, was data driven. Again, we had a really neat session. I can't, pack back. I keep wanting to say backpack, but again, just with artificial intelligence, the way we're using data. So Rob, this is where it gets tricky. Is there anybody in the room who'd like to share? And again, it's always great to volunteer someone else. So you can put your hand up and point to someone else if you'd like. Oh, all heads are going down. Oh, yes, we've got somebody. This is fantastic. And can you just introduce yourself? I forgot that last time. Your name?
Hi, I'm Jamie Hoover from Monroe Community College, and I don't know if it came up in the chat or not, but my first reaction was tech support.
It is. And just we're going to build on that. So again, I know we've got other responses in the audience, but for some reason, time just keeps moving. So we're just going to close the chat. And let's see if I can get this to work. There we are. So you mentioned Alex, and I'm always a little jealous. This is my big brother. We're not related, but Terry Anderson was our first federal chair in online or distance education. He was also Randy Garrison's very first doctoral student. And I think it's like the oldest child. It's always your favorite. Randy didn't have a lot of doctoral students, and I was his last one. He said, after me, I'm never taking on another grad student ever. So I always feel a little bit. So he did his doctoral studies during the 90s. And some of us, Meg, I'm picking on you. Remember, Meg, CMC, computer mediated communication. So he was looking at, this is a bit of a meta-analysis he did in the 90s. And some of these folks are still active. Zane Burge and Bob Mason from the States, Morten Poulsen, who's from Norway, who's involved with the International Council for Distance Education. And then there was these three guys up in Alberta. The capital city is Edmonton. It was Randy Garrison. There was Terry Anderson. Terry was the in charge of the Teaching and Learning Center. Randy was the dean of the Continuing Ed Center. And then Walter Archer was the dean of engineering. And they used to go to the faculty center every Friday for beers and chat. And they sort of, working on Terry's dissertation, looked at the different roles. And again, we've got a lot of them, but there was this idea of sort of organizational design. And I think it really is more than social. It really is the modeling, the facilitation, and finally, this idea of leadership, or don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We are subject matter experts. So Terry went a little further with his dissertation, and I'll move this down. I'm bad here. I'm learning. There it is. I've got it. Yay. Look at that. He finally knows how to move things. So Terry worked with an organization. He actually started the organization across Lake Ontario. It's called Contact North, and it's mainly for adult upgrading K-12, but it's working with our remote communities. So he had a lot of experience working with Indigenous or Native people. So he's the one, and other people have done it before, but he coined the term teaching, not teacher presence. If this is going to work in a community, we all have to have skin in the game. And I think we all know this. And back to you, is if we're going to empower, we really need to do ourselves out of a job by the end of the semester. Again, I'm the worst one. We're not helicopter teachers. We're not helicopter parents. We've got to let them fly on their own. And, first attempt at learning, they have to learn how to fail in order to do it. So Terry came up with these three areas: design, organization, facilitating discourse, and this idea, I'd really like leadership more than direct instruction. And then I came along after working with Dennis a little bit and put the 3 R's in. So how important it is that we really design and organize courses for relevance. So right off the bat, students can see themselves in it, how important it is. And we had a great session about Hack Back. And I don't know if the young woman here is from the business department, but I think wherever we are, collaboration, we have this Conference Board of Canada, and they're looking at sort of the outcomes that they want from our students. And it's all around communication, critical thinking, but how we can work collaboratively, especially in this online world. So this idea of facilitating discourse, relationships, and finally, that we've got to push students out of their comfort zones, the rigor. So we had that, as academics, we have to do something. So let's see if it'll work. Can we get the next slide? Drum roll. So I figured we needed 7 principles. So some of you may have seen this Venn diagram before. I remember the very first time I saw it, I was dizzy. Randy was new at the University of Calgary. He was the director of our Teaching and Learning Center at the University of Calgary. I was a young professor teaching grad studies. I figure, there's got to be something about this framework. I should invite him to the class. And it was beyond me. We had all these Venn diagrams, his background's physics. I'm going like, I don't get it. But it really is interesting how different people around the world really get this. And I know you get it at SUNY, and they really get it in Brazil. And some of you may know Brazil. Paulo Freire, this is where it's the home of critical pedagogy. Really, if you really want to see neat stuff, it's great. And when you go to Brazil, there's none of this student-centered, there's none of this teacher-centered, it's learning-centered. Learning is right in the center, the educational experience. And then sort of the ingredients to make it happen is the teaching presence. I know we've got a lot of, I like calling you educational designers. I know instructional designer is the word, but I like education. Instruction just, I don't know. But again, there has to be a design to it. The facilitation, again, in our European ways, Western world, we really focus on the cognitive presence. I'm going to show some slides in a minute that I think we need to focus more than just on the mind. And this idea of social, that we are social beings and we really need to be able to project ourselves and develop our identity. So there's the community of inquiry framework. Randy, I did my job. He forces me, you got to show the diagram. And then what we did, or I did, I'll be honest, I'm the one to blame this. We took the idea of the 3 categories of teaching presence and sort of created these 7 principles. So 2 of the principles really relate to the idea of design, and I'll go through this in a minute with you. 2 of them are around facilitation, 2 of them are around direct instruction, and the hidden one, the one that Zane Burge just did a really great article in one of our journals, is criticizing the thing is, what about assessment? So the 7th principle is really ensuring that assessment is aligned with the intended learning outcomes. I know I'm really great, remember Bloom's taxonomy, we're great using verbs. It's, where the rubber hits the road, what are the activities in the assessment feedback? So let's take that and see if I can keep moving the slides. This is where it's going to get tricky. So just around design, just a reminder about design is the importance, if we really want students to be engaged right off the bat, we've got to design a course and we've got to have an activities where students can see themselves in that course right off the bat, even before they join us for the first Zoom session, the first face-to-face session, or if they're online asynchronous. So just, thinking about how we're going to sort of, the hook, develop, find out the curiosity, the connectedness. I don't think we have those 2 young women, Meg from Ireland here. They came in late, but we've got a great session this afternoon about prior learning assessment. I think this is so important, finding out what the students already know so that we can build on their experiences. So we've got this, and this is where I think I may lose you. So what I'd like us to do now is I'm going to move this up. Let's see if Norm can do this. It's tinyurl.com SUNY, all capitalized, summit. Is if you can go to that document, so tinyurl/SUNY.summit, I promise, and we'll make sure that we link this to, here we go. I think this is the right one. Yes. And I'll make sure, Alex, I think we already have a link to this somewhere, but what I'd love you to do, people have already done it. If you can choose, everybody gets their own row. This is democracy in action. So you get your own row. You cannot write over top of another person. So there we've got the anonymous Mink has chosen. So please show your row. If you feel comfortable, you could give your table name, you could give whatever. But Jeremy, thank you. Jeremy, thank you, Melly. So just pick your row. And then the first thing I want you to do, and it's great because Alex, thank you for doing the audience analysis. We have a lot of ID people, a lot of instructional designers. So this is more than just an icebreaker. This is an activity. How do you get students engaged, involved right off the bat in the course? It could be before the course, after the course. One of the things I like that I'll talk a little bit is about a powerful learning experience. I really love to have the students share stories. So one of the things I get them to do right off the bat is share stories. Again, it's really easy to do online in Zoom breakout rooms. I have a room just like this. Again, Lisa has a great website, Lisa Flex Space, right? Where you can see incredible ideas about the way to arrange classes so that you're going to get really active, engaged learning. So what we do, we tell our stories like we do in a Google document, come up, what were the key items? What really got you engaged? And then we actually create the engagement guidelines. These are the guidelines we're going to use to guide our course. So that's my idea. I'm going to turn it over to the tables now. And Meg, thank you. Thank you, Meg. You're doing it. And Meg, you can share at your table. But for those of you folks online, my apologies, you sort of have to do this on your own. But if you could start with the second column, designing for relevance. What are some of the activities? Again, it could be in your own course. Students, I'm going to pick on you. You're always the best consumers. You know way more than us because you're taking a lot of courses from a lot of folks. What are some activities that really help you engage at the beginning of the class? So I'm going to be quiet. Again, table conversation. It looks like we've got at least one person at each table on the laptop, which is wonderful. But if you could just take a moment and share, it could be websites, resources. I promise later today, it'll be probably maybe tomorrow, because Rob and Lisa, I think we're going to be doing some singing and stuff tonight. We've got a full day, no pressure, but this is going to be a late night. So again, just over to you, tables, just ideas. So just sharing ideas. What are some ideas in terms of designing activities that engage students right off the bat? You get to talk. Yeah. Corrected. Okay. Wow. Yeah, 7 to go. Yeah. No, we're gonna, I grouped them. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay. S- How to do it. Okay. Okay, this is Canadians. We're known for our pathological politeness. Again, we're very passive aggressive though. Put a hockey stick in our hands and we get it. Again, I hate doing this. I see it already. It's poor time management. It's always been, I go on and on. I help people become future teachers. And I always talk how important it is to leave time at the end, for reflection, closure, and whatever. And I can see, again, just like a doctor, we're sometimes our worst enemies. Some great comments there. Meg, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. I think this is really important, Meg, but this is really the beauty of working in these high flex environments. So what Meg mentioned is she's actually taking time, and Meg, I think it's probably through Zoom or Teams or whatever, to meet with the students before class. And Meg, I just want to build onto this assessment. It's really fascinating. We have this incredible guy in our computer science department. So some of us did these graduate degrees, and remember, a part of a graduate degree was the oral examination. discussion. And honestly, in some ways, that's the highest form of feedback. You've really got to explain what you're doing. And Meg, it's really exciting to see, not only to meet them before, and it's easy to do, just 5 minutes, and what a difference to get them to know before, and the interest. And Meg, it's also the challenges they go through. It's, I'll be honest, it really helps me understand when we talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion, what the challenges they're facing and how we can help them. And it's always nice because they find someone else in the class that has a similar challenge. I know there's tons of great ideas. I promise I'll go in and look at them, but time is quickly slipping through me, and we are not going through all 7. That's 2 principles down. So we've just got a few more to go. So just to go back to the slides here for a minute. Yes, slideshow. And I'll move this around so that we can sort of see. One of the things I do, and I learned this from our ID people, is how important it is to do audience or needs analysis. And so this is just something I do with every course. I'm not sure. Well, yeah, you're using Brightspace now, the same as us. We just transitioned as well. Really easy to put a survey together, but it's fascinating to hear from the students about what their goals are of the course, what they expect to happen in the synchronous sessions, what they expect to do asynchronously, how they'll be assessed, and the assistance. So what I like to do is do this needs assessment before class, collect the data, and then divide the students into different teams to get them to actually go through the data and summarize it for themselves so they can see trends, they can see they're not alone. So that's the one thing we do. Let's see if I can keep moving the slides. The other thing, again, and I think this is so powerful, is people, I've been just hearing everybody's stories here. Lisa, we're young. Lisa and I just had birthdays recently, but we're young. We're over 60, but we're young. We never thought we'd be with the Beatles when I'm 60. Okay, anyway, stay focused, Norm, stay focused. But again, in terms of developing that relevance and whatever, we all have stories. And it's so, when we talk about empowering the students, when they share their stories and they're learning from each other, it's magical. The other thing that I think is really important, and we had a great session yesterday by Karen in terms of e-portfolios. We call them professional learning plans, but it's really exciting when students are setting their own learning goals. Again, we have learning outcomes for our course, but we allow them to set goals. The trick is to help them develop the strategies to go from A to Z, or A to Z, as we say in Canada, in terms of what are the strategies. You've got this great goal, but what are the strategies you're going to do it? And how are you going to demonstrate the evidence at the end of the course? And it's wonderful. We do this. It's in an education program. We do this in our business program. I think that was the example yesterday, because it really works well in terms of their internships, their placements, that they're actually developing their identity and their goal setting as they go through. So just quickly, in terms of wrapping up design, this is a really interesting fella, Leroy Littlebear. So he came down in 1975 and set up and organized the first Native American Studies program at Harvard University, a Blackfoot First Nation fella from the middle of nowhere in Alberta. And when I talk to Leroy, it's fascinating. And I think this is in any culture, not just Indigenous culture, the power of stories. And again, a lot of our Indigenous cultures, it was an oral tradition. But he always tells me they tell the same story over and over and over again, but the story is always different because you're at a different point in your life. And I think that's important for students, is the repetition. We don't get it the first time. We need to practice over and over. Okay. We're on to part number 2. I'll drag this down. Alex, I'm getting better so we can see it. So the second one is the idea of facilitation. I think we've all heard that, a guide on the side or a sage on the stage, but it really is situated teaching. Different situations call for different strategies. But this one I think is so important. My experience, I always love teaching first year, first semester. And unfortunately, where I come from, we don't have the SATs, but we have a lot of standardized testing, and there's a lot of individualization. The students have been conditioned to work individually. And again, we had that great session about ChatGPT, about collaboration. And so it's really interesting. My experience, the majority of my first year students really do not know how to work together in groups or collaborate. So our second assignment here, if I can move it, is to go back to that document And what we're looking at, and this is, I find is you've got to scaffold it. And I'll talk about some strategies I use, but what are some of the collaborative activities you're using in the class? And again, there's a time and a place. At our Open University, Athabasca University, we have a lot of self-paced courses because the students need to go through this individually. But in the majority of our courses, and again, what we're hearing from the workforce, whether you're in a nonprofit, whether you're in a Forbes top 500, is the importance of being able to work together. And I think that's a real important life skill. So we're going to go back. Here we are. We're still somewhat on time. We're into the column number 3. And oh my gosh, people have already started. This is wonderful. So just an example from me. What is old is new. You have these wonderful things down here called the NSF, the National Science Foundation grants. And my gosh, this grant, I think this was way back in the 90s or in the early 2000s. It's the University of California at Los Angeles developed this, and I often think I need this, a CPR tool, but it's called the Calibrated Peer Review Tool. And we were talking about the importance of the bots and stuff in terms of correcting grammar, but I think it's so valuable when we take students through the same peer review process that we go through as academics. And this is a really neat tool. It used to be free. There's a nominal thing for a site license. We have it, and we use it heavily in our natural sciences. We call them laboratory manuscripts now, not lab reports. But as the students go through the work, they actually go through a peer editing process. And this tool is amazing because it takes the paper, it anonymizes it. It's one of those things, short-term pain, long-term gain. You as a faculty member have to come up with sort of a beginning, intermediate, and advanced quality because it's really quick calibrating. It's help students learn what it means to have sort of low, medium, high quality. But the most important thing, it's allowing them to learn how to give constructive feedback. In Canada, we're not good at that. We freak out when you criticize us. We love you guys, but when you say we're doing something wrong, we get really small and we feel bad. But I think this is important, and it's really neat. You know, they say everything you needed to know, you learned in kindergarten. Go into kindergarten class. 2 stars and I wonder is 2 stars a wish. You know, lead with 2 very specific strengths or things that you're seeing. And the last thing, I wonder if the turtle should have eyes, or I wonder if the turtle should be green. So just, I'm going to be quiet for a minute. I promise I'll finish at 10:15. We're almost there. But just taking a moment, this for me is the trickiest one. It is designing meaningful activities. And again, it's experiential. My experience is students don't know how to do this. So we do a lot of low stakes group formation activities at the beginning of the course to help students learn the power. But, you know, we'll talk about it in a minute. Be quiet, Norm. It's over to them. So it's 10:03. Let's go for about 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Time is, we're losing the time, unfortunately, because of me. So just some ideas already there, just back in the tables. You folks are doing a great job in the online world. Our friends in online are coming through. So just sharing some ideas at the tables in terms of facilitating, help students do it. I think they call it the Pareto principle. It's usually 20% of the students doing 80% of the work. So how do we get away from that? So over to you. 3 minutes. I know, Dennis, not a lot of time, but over to you. Back to you, folks. Yeah. Introductions all day long. Okay. So yeah. This is yeah, the group. Okay. Okay. Going to be out of time. Okay. Out of time again. It's okay, this is where I really go into heavy apologies, but this is where I always, it's the beauty of hybrid or blended learning that we'll be able to continue this conversation online. I promise we'll continue to use this document. So just unbelievably, we have less than 10 minutes left. So I never want to go into PowerPoint overdrive, but there's a few things I do want to highlight. So again, I think what's important and what really got me going about this community of inquiry framework is the circular nature of learning. And I'll be honest, I come from a pretty heavy European tradition, and I love linear. I love, just what we've done with the columns. That's the way I work. I've been pushed by a lot of people at different institutions in ID, they're using concept mapping, all these things that, the world is more circular. And when I think of circular, I think of a fellow that actually worked with my father back in the 60s. My father was an engineering professor at the University of Guelph, just across in Ontario. And this is Bruce Tuckman. And some of you may have heard of Tuckman's different group development model. And even though this was developed a few years after I was born, I think it still really plays in. And I think it's really important that students actually experience the different stages of the group in terms of the forming, in terms of the conflict, and again, how we do this in a constructive way, how we learn to agree to disagree, that there are different perspectives, and to try and listen. I think it was Stephen Covey, remember those 7 principles he had: seek to understand, then be understood. We have the storming, the norming, performing, reforming, transforming. I saw people had jigsaw groups. There's a few other ideas I want to just share. Here we go. Again, the idea of formally putting them in is people are used to working with their friends, but especially in teacher education, they're going to be working with preceptors, mentor teachers, someone they've never worked before. So I always choose the friends for them and how they've got to learn how to give honest feedback to each other. And I'll be honest, it's not easy. And there has to be a lot of moderation on my part and a lot of this. This is something I think, it's some Mideastern university, but this has really worked well for me. And again, the slides, the link to the slides are in that Google Doc that you put together. But structured reading groups, and my goodness, does this ever work well in a hybrid and high flex environment, is assigning a reading, but it's a bit like some of us may remember Edward de Bono. Remember those thinking hats, the different colors? So the way it works in a structured reading group is each week you've got students in groups of 5. Each week they have a different role. They're like a reporter, they're the discussion director, they're the connector, the devil's advocate, and every week they rotate. So they get a reading, and then based on the reading, they have to contribute to the online discussion forum before the synchronous session. Then when they meet in the synchronous session, they're put into the groups and the reporter summarizes that and gives it back. And I find, again, this is a bit of an issue with me being an old folk, is I find even myself that I'm scanning. I don't think I'm reading as much at depth when I'm reading online. So just helping students develop the strategies to go a little deeper. So that's my idea. So again, what's really important with facilitation, and they're looking at us like eagles and hawks, and especially for me in a teacher education process, is how important I'm modeling the professional practice. We heard it yesterday in the pack back sessions is, making sure that the students are spelling the corporations' names correctly, really taking on those professional roles and those sort of things. So just one more to go, and then I think we'll be there. This last one, I think it's really important. And I was mentioning to Rob, there's a really neat book. If you haven't heard of it, it's called The Nudge Factor. It was written by Cass Susteen, who was really involved in the first Obama election campaign. His wife is Samantha Powers, who still, I think she was the UN ambassador. She was the American ambassador to the UN while Obama, and now she's the UN, she's in charge of the global refugee strategy or whatever. But it's so neat. Like, how do we work on nudging students out of their comfort zone, putting them in situations where they're not comfortable? There was a whole philosophy, and you've got a lot of it, outward bound. That's the whole idea based on, who was that guy? Piaget, assimilation and accommodation, push people outside of their comfort zone. And that's where the real learning takes place. Okay, he's gone into overdrive now. So it's your homework now. Go to the last column. You can do it on your own throughout the day, but I'm really always excited to hear about challenging learning activities you've designed that really push the students. And again, this is where the relevance happens, because it's usually connected to the real life. One of the things that I think we do a relatively good job at is we're the head office for the majority, except for Toronto, the majority of companies have their head offices in Calgary, Alberta. The railway folks, all the banks, of course, all the oil companies. So it's very easy for us to get to these workplaces. And I'll be honest, the student's mindset, when you do a seminar in a corporate boardroom or you do it in a school, they're thinking different. They're taking on a different identity. And again, just with the blended thing, how important it is for them to have a reading before they go to the seminar. They have an online discussion, whoever the facilitator is, which is usually a corporate executive or a principal or something, has access to the online discussion and can really build on that in the seminar. And then the students take time to journal and reflect on what they learned and how that applies to their future practice as they go forward. So just wrapping up, because I know we won't have much time. We heard about the idea of portfolios yesterday. I think this is so important. It's really fascinating. Just in our state or our province, practicing teachers are required to have a teacher professional growth plan. So they have to set goals and demonstrate evidence every year. So it's really neat. We're just using Google Sites. You could use any, there's Weebly, there's Wix, there's anything, but it's so exciting. The framework and the mindset that students are creating in our program, they're using in professional practice. We have people, this woman's been out teaching for 8 years now. So the other thing you've know as well is just in terms of contracts, the responsibility, especially if you're in a professional field, and there's a whole website that talks about helping students develop these contracts and make really difficult decisions about the other students who maybe aren't following through with the responsibilities. This is a site that used to be at Indiana University in Bloomington. It's moved up to UBC in Canada, but really neat team-based learning collaborative, just about doing teamwork in this high flex learning environment. So just quickly finishing, just how important it is just to remember that we are the learning leader, and we've got to keep our hand on the rudder and keep the ship moving forward. Again, the nudge factor, we're moving beyond. It's really fascinating, the learning versus the social space. We used to use Twitter a lot, and I don't want to be careful because I don't know if you know, but Elon Musk went to the university I went to. He went to university across the pond here at Queen's University. His first wife was an English major from Queen's University as well. I don't know. We just don't like what he's doing with Twitter. So we've moved on to Mastodon and these other things. But I think it's really important. We're using a lot of these social tools, but just remember it's a learning and it's not a social space. And I think with that, we're going to end. I know there's probably questions and things like that, but we can carry them on. Please put any of the questions into that, the diagram, into the chart we've done. I'm also around tonight for everything like that. Thank you so much for being active participants in that. I'm really excited for the next session. And again, it was a little egotistical, but if you can remember to spell my last name, Vaughan. You used to have a very famous Norman Vaughan. He was on the first American expedition to the South Pole. And when he was 88 years old, he climbed the highest peak on Antarctica as well. Unfortunately, he's passed away. So if you can remember my last name, I come up pretty high in Google. Thanks for your time. And again, I'll be around for questions all day. Thank you.